how the hell did this happen? Recently, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, went to Canada for a bunch of reasons in order to get more aid, to facilitate relations. Point is, though, while he was doing his trip to the United States to visit the UN and do a speech there and visit with American politicians, he stopped by Canada to meet with Justin Trudeau, other government officials, in order to try to facilitate more aid to Ukraine in its struggle against the Russian invasion. During that trip, he got to speak to Parliament. And during the speech he gave to Parliament, or before the speech, the leader of the Parliament, which is an MP that was chosen to lead the Parliament, kind of like, you know, we have a Senate Majority Leader and a House Majority Leader, and we have like a Senate Parliamentarian, House Parliamentarian. You get the idea. The person who kind of guides the events. He sits in the front of the room, all dressed up, guiding the events. Well, he, as well with a bunch of other people, invited a bunch of different people from, you know, the Ukrainian Canadian community and others, in order to just be in attendance for the event, for the president of Ukraine coming to visit for a historic visit where Ukraine's engaged in a resistance against a horrific invasion, and he's come over. Wow, it's a big event, and we're going to get the Ukrainian Canadian community involved. Well, apparently, the grandson of grandson of a certain Ukrainian Canadian, a 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian, messaged the parliament staff and was like, look, we would like to bring our most fantastic grandfather to this event so he could see what it's like. You know, he fought against the Russians. He fought against the Russians in World War II. And they said, okay. They didn't Google him, apparently. Now, this comes from them, right? I doubt, and I'm quick to believe them, because I doubt they would have Googled him, found this out, and just gone through with it anyway. That'd be political suicide, after all. They didn't Google him. They did no background research. They did nothing. They just said, okay, you can bring your 78-year-old grandfather who fought against the Russians, the Soviets, during World War II. Comes in, and not only does he get to sit in the audience, he gets a round of applause. He gets cheers from Parliament before Zelensky makes his speech. Now, here's some footage of that.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
Man, and there's so many in there. They are all so sure of them, so I don't see a single bit of hesitation. You know, those people in that crowd just heard, fought against the Russians, Ukrainian independence, and all started clapping. Nobody in there put two and two together and said, wait, World War II? Not after World War II, not before World War II, but exactly who is he fighting for? Was it UPA? Was it nobody asked those questions. Nobody in the room knew this random 98-year-old man, and so they were called upon to cheer for this random 98-year-old man, given only the information that they fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War, and given no time to think about it, they all start clapping. I saw some people trying to speculate, like, oh, this shows that the Canadian Parliament loves not to. No, don't. I don't think that shows any of that. I think it shows a bunch of people in office who were told, look, a veteran, clap, and then they all started clapping while not thinking about it. Now, what became the story is that this old man, this quaint little old man that we see in the audience, is not a Soviet veteran or like a veteran who fought against the Nazis. He's not even UPA. He's not anything else outside of the Waffen SS. He fought with the Galician, I believe it's the 12th or the 14th, I forget exactly which. Galician division, which fought against the Soviet Union during the Nazi German invasion of the Soviet Union. He volunteered in 1943. So if any of you, I saw some people trying to defend this guy, saying, oh, you don't get it, he was just fighting for his homeland. And when you sign up for the SS, and let me just be clear, it was a very small group of people who would try to defend this guy still. You swear fealty to Hitler. Not only do you swear fealty to Hitler, but you have to be witness to some of the worst atrocities known to man. Even if this guy Yaroslav didn't personally participate in any war crimes, because we have yet to see any accusations brought against him specifically for war crimes, even though the division he fought in has been accused of war crimes, even if no international court has found them guilty of any. He most certainly witnessed it. And it's not like he wouldn't know what he was getting into. This isn't 1941, Germans just crossed the border. Oh, yeah, we hate Stalin. We'll join anybody who's fighting Stalin. This is 1943. This is 2 years into it. Plenty of time for the SS to burn down villages, massacre people, dump them in graves, kill Jews, and be engaged in some of the most horrific violence known to man. He had plenty of time to reflect on that violence, see that violence, have the grapevine of information traveling from village to village travel to him, and then went and volunteered in 1943. So I don't want to hear anybody saying, you know, that you don't really understand, like it's actually a little different. I understand that Ukrainians didn't want to be part of the Soviet Union, but the Nazis viewed the Ukrainians as subhuman. There was no way where the Nazis won that the Ukrainians were going to get a fair shake and not have their whole country turned into quote-unquote living space for Lebensraum. So even if this guy in his mind wasn't for fighting for Hitler, you know, saw the atrocities but didn't participate and wanted to, you know, not associate himself with that, which is pretty silly. If everybody else in your unit and everybody else around you is engaging in these types of atrocities, or you're seeing that on a daily basis, it's kind of hard to remove yourself from that. But even if you accept all those premises, which I do not accept, but even if you do, the German was going to turn the breadbasket of Europe, Ukraine, into their breadbasket. They were going to push out the locals for settlers and create living space. And so when you talk about fighting for Ukrainian independence, what type of Ukrainian state would they get that would be more sovereign than the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine, which they got after the Second World War? What independence was being fought for there? Someone can tell me, oh, he's fighting for a hatred of the Soviet Union, a hatred for Bolshevism. You can throw those things out. I don't think any of those things are good reasons to make up for the horror of signing up with the SS. But I don't buy the defenses people have been putting forward for this guy. The very few who have been defending him, let me just be clear, very few people have been defending him. Very few. Both in the English-speaking space and in the Ukrainian-speaking space. There have been some people in the Ukrainian-speaking space that have defended him, but the majority of the Ukrainian-speaking space I have seen have been embarrassed by the story. Now, how the hell did this happen? When I saw this scene, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of this scene. When Homelander gets that round of applause. You guys know what I'm talking about, the meme where everybody claps for him and he's kind of confused. Like, wait, why is everyone clapping for me? I'm a monster. I did something horrible. This is what this reminded me of. How did Parliament end up applauding this neo-Nazi? Well, first off, let me push back against some narratives that have been laid forward by the normal political charlatans that we're used to. Benny Johnson comes out with a tweet right after the story drops. Zelensky honors literal Nazi. And then goes into detail about Yaroslav. Zelensky did not know about Yaroslav before going to Parliament. In fact, if you look at this footage right here, you can see Zelensky's actually doing nothing. You see Zelensky over there, he's not even moving. He's the only person in the room not clapping. Was he smart enough to recognize what was going on? Who knows? Either way. But point is, the statement Zelensky honors Yaroslav makes it sound like Zelensky took Yaroslav from Ukraine and brought him here to be honored, or Zelensky chose Yaroslav to come here and be honored. Zelensky had no choice or no idea that Yaroslav was going to be speaking there, or not speaking there, be appearing there, his background, his history, any of that. So the statement, Zelensky honors Yaroslav, is nonsense. He didn't give him any award. He didn't talk about him and like go over there and say, this guy's a real hero for Ukraine who gave that. No, this is it. This is the only clip he has to. Zelensky honors Yaroslav, and he's not even clapping in the clip. The people who honored Yaroslav in this would be the parliamentarians who invited him, would be the Canadian Parliament and the Canadian government. That would be what honored them. That is the institution that should be mostly embarrassed. In fact, and I don't know if this is a hot take, I feel unbelievably bad for Zelensky in this situation. Unbelievably bad. Let's just state a bunch of facts in a row, and if you guys can see what I'm trying to get at here about how I feel bad for Zelensky. Vladimir Zelensky goes to Canada after going to the UN, where he advocated on behalf of his country, which is being illegally invaded, and having his nation's identity trying to be wiped off the face of the earth. Goes to Canada to try to get supplies for that struggle, while going to Parliament in an event that was not managed by him. Somebody speaks there, doesn't even speak. Somebody appears there who's 98 years old, very little information given to a crowd, gets applauded for. Zelensky probably doesn't even think about it much of the time. Later finds out that that person was a member of the Waffen SS. Now, Zelensky is the first Jewish president of Ukraine. Not only is he the first Jewish president of Ukraine, he is the first Jewish president of Ukraine whose family survived the Holocaust, and he lost many family members. His parents survived the Holocaust, while many of his family members died in the Holocaust. And so the first Jewish president of Ukraine, whose family was killed in the Holocaust, parents survived, goes to Canada to be welcomed by the Canadian Parliament, who has brought with them an SS fighter. When you think about it like that, I honestly feel terrible for the guy, for him to be embarrassed by Canada in this way. And so, obviously, in Canada, the political uproar in response to this from the conservative opposition, from the NDP, from really everyone, was immense. It was a wave of critique from popular political commentators, from other MPs, from Jewish members of parliament, from everyone. The backlash was immense, as it should be. As it should be. And because of that backlash, Justin Trudeau had to come forward and release a statement. And this is what he had to say. This is the first time he spoke after this revelation came to light.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine, as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it.
Some people are saying that the end of this is him blaming Russian disinformation for what happened. Almost as if they didn't hear the first 30 seconds of the statement. But I don't know really what more he can say. I mean, his government, royally messed up here. The only logical solution from everybody involved was to call for the parliamentarian president who invited the guy there to resign. I mean, he had, on accident, Jewish members of parliament applauding an SS member, an SS fighter who volunteered to fight with the SS, and they had no idea. They had no idea at the time. They were given no forewarning that the Canadian Parliament was going to honor him in that way. And before you knew it, multiple MPs and others were calling for his resignation. But we really knew that the Senate, not the Senate parliamentarian, sorry, I'm a Yankoid, that the parliamentarian speaker was in trouble when the foreign minister, Melanie Joly, Melanie, came out and asked for the speaker to resign, saying that the speaker should resign. Now, this is the foreign minister for the Canadian government, and so most people saw this as a statement from the Canadian administration, from Trudeau's administration, that they should that the Canadian parliamentarian speaker should resign. That this person would not release a statement like this unless Trudeau had given it the okay. That Trudeau's administration had said, yes, we do want him to resign. And then a few hours after this, the speaker, Anthony Rota, resigned. He apologized, said he was terribly embarrassed. Actually, let's read his exact statement here. Actually, no, this is the statement from the Foreign Affairs Minister saying it was completely unacceptable and that the speaker should listen to members of the House and step down. I don't think that there is any alternative. They were right. Here it is. I must step down as your speaker. I reiterate my profound regret. This is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and by extension to all Canadians. I mean, he's not wrong. Now, I do want to put forward a few things. Number one, there is a problem with the commemoration of the SS in Ukrainian history by certain extremists on the fringe right. That is something that should be criticized. That is something that should be critiqued. In fact, there actually is a monument in Canada, too. One second. Canada SS Monument. There is a monument in Canada for the SS, for the 14th Waffen Grenadier SS Division, 1st Galician, the one that this guy is a member of. There is a monument to that. This shouldn't exist on Canadian soil. Why does this exist on Canadian soil? The Canadians fought the Nazis. They fought the SS. I understand that certain Galician SS fighters fled to Canada after the war because they were terrified of Soviet imprisonment. But those people, if they participate in war crime, number one, they should be turned over to an international court. And now Poland is actually seeking the extradition of this 98-year-old man, extending the lifespan of the scandal. But if not, these people should live in relative obscurity, in shame of the decisions that they had made in their life, if they are not being tried in an international court. Not propping up monuments to these people who had to swear fealty to Adolf Hitler, one of the worst monsters of the 20th century. So that's the first thing I want to say. Now, people will ask me how widespread the problem is. Again, it is a problem of the fringe right still. This is not a belief that the majority of Ukrainians believe that these guys are heroes, are going to talk about the SS positively. Even the ultra-nationalists that I've talked to, many of them will talk down the SS for collaborating with the Germans who also wanted to subdue the Ukrainian people. So I don't want to overstate like, oh, all Ukrainians love these guys. But this is a problem on the fringe extremes. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I see people trying to use this to prove Russia's idea, their propaganda, that Ukraine is a quote-unquote Nazi country. In fact, I saw Russian propagandists on Twitter and elsewhere trying to use this to say, this proves that Ukraine is a Nazi country. And I saw people even trying to take Elon Musk's words and like twist it. I think I even saw Jackson Hinkle twisting it to say, Elon Musk is right to be worried, right to think that Russia is right about the Nazi problem in Ukraine. Let me just respond to this succinctly, because I don't want to give this any air whatsoever. This guy was in Canada. The reason he was platformed was because of the Canadian government and a Canadian parliamentarian, which was fired after platforming him.
Bankrupt man.
Do you think any of the war criminals that platformed, like that were platformed on the Russian side, have been fired for platforming them? What about the leader of the Donetsk occupation forces, Denis Pushilin? That guy. Do you think he in any way cares that he was giving awards to Rusich neo-Nazis? Do you think he's going to be removed? Do you think the Russians are going to even think twice about it? Absolutely not. Thankfully, the parliament, the leader of the parliament stepped down, and they're going to stay out of that position because obviously they have shown that they can do basically no prep or no background research before booking people. Also, Bobby Duke, thank you so much for the 5 gifted tier 1s. I appreciate it. So, this is a Canada problem, at least when it comes to this specific instance. I don't know how we could use this to reflect on Ukraine at all. In fact, you can't. Because again, this was within Canada. It was the Canadian government who organized this. If you want to judge Ukraine, judge it by the laws that it has on the books, judge it by what its own government does. Don't judge it by a single member of the Ukrainian diaspora that was improperly platformed by a separate government. That's not fair. If anything, this whole scandal gave Zelensky the short end of the stick. Maybe Dylan is confused because the speaker called Le President French. Okay, I saw another thing too. I saw some people saying, well, this doesn't prove that modern Ukraine's a Nazi country. That's not true. But it does show that Ukraine has a problem with Nazi, has a dark history of Nazism. Was the other theme I was getting. And yes, they have a dark history of Nazism, the same way that, you know, Russian collaborators during World War II have a dark history of Nazism. You know, what was it called? The under that like collaborationist Soviet general. I forget what they were called. Does anybody know? It's the Russian Legion or something along those lines. Somebody will tell me. But there were also Estonian collaborators, Latvian Vlasov, the collaborator general. There was Lithuanian collaborators, Romanians, the ROA. Yes, the ROA. These are all dark Nazi histories. What I've noticed with the Russian narrative, though, is they want to make it so that Ukraine has a uniquely Nazi history that's different than the other bordering areas, which leads them to have to do what they're doing to Ukraine, to invade Ukraine. Even though much more Ukrainians died in service of the Red Army, fighting against the Nazis, millions more than Ukrainians signed up with the Nazis. By like a ratio of like 10-1. It's not even close. So when we talk about this history of Ukraine, let's just make sure we're painting the full picture. That this history is real. It should be acknowledged. But it's also just one puzzle piece of Ukrainian history. And that the bigger picture of Ukrainian history was a larger effort against the Nazi occupation because Ukrainians recognized that the German government saw them as subhuman.